Excellence is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. The most important relationship we can all have is the one you have with yourself. The most important journey you can take is one of self-discovery. To know yourself, you must spend time with yourself. You must not be afraid to be alone. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. It is our choice of good or evil that determines our character, not our opinion about good or evil. Tyrants preserve themselves by sowing fear and mistrust among the citizens by means of spies, by distracting them with foreign wars, by eliminating men of spirit who might lead a revolution, by humbling the people and making them incapable of decisive action. Greatness of spirit is accompanied by simplicity and sincerity. The intelligence consists not only in the knowledge, but also in the skill to apply the knowledge into practice. True happiness comes from gaining insight and growing into your best possible self. Otherwise, all you're having is immediate gratification pleasure, which is fleeting and doesn't grow you as a person. One may go wrong in many different ways, but right only in one, which is why it is easy to fail and difficult to succeed. First, have a definite, clear practical ideal, a goal, an objective. Second, have the necessary means to achieve your ends, wisdom, money, materials, and methods. Third, adjust all your means to that end. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. The high-minded man does not bear grudges, for it is not the mark of a great soul to remember injuries, but to forget them. Whatever we learn to do, we learn by actually doing it. Men come to be builders, for instance, by building, and harp players by playing the harp. In the same way, by doing just acts we come to be just, by doing self-controlled acts, we come to be self-controlled. And by doing brave acts, we become brave. Whatever we learn to do, we learn by actually doing it. Men come to be builders, for instance, by building, and harp players by playing the harp. In the same way, by doing just acts we come to be just, by doing self-controlled acts, we come to be self-controlled, and by doing brave acts, we become brave. If you see a man approaching with the obvious intent of doing you good, run for your life. Consider pleasures as they depart, not as they come. The greatest thing by far is to be a master of metaphor. It is the one thing that cannot be learned from others, and it is also a sign of genius, since a good metaphor implies an intuitive perception of the similarity of the dissimilar. The society that loses its grip on the past is in danger, for it produces men who know nothing but the present, and who are not aware that life had been, and could be, different from what it is. When there is no middle class, and the poor greatly exceed in number, troubles arise, and the state soon comes to an end. Man is a goal-seeking animal. His life only has meaning if he is reaching out and striving for his goals. The man who is truly good and wise will bear with dignity whatever fortune sends, and will always make the best of his circumstances. Teenagers these days are out of control. They eat like pigs, they are disrespectful of adults, they interrupt and contradict their parents, and they terrorize their teachers. The tyrant, who in order to hold his power, suppresses every superiority, does away with good men, forbids education and light, controls every movement of the citizens, and, keeping them under a perpetual servitude, wants them to grow accustomed to baseness and cowardice, has his spies everywhere to listen to what is said in the meetings, and spreads dissension and calumny among the citizens and impoverishes them, is obliged to make war in order to keep his subjects occupied and impose on them. Permanent need of a chief. The beauty of the soul shines out when a man bears with composure one heavy mischance after another, not because he does not feel them, but because he is a man of high and heroic temper. The beauty of the soul shines out when a man bears with composure one heavy mischance after another, not because he does not feel them, but because he is a man of high and heroic temper. Virtue means doing the right thing, in relation to the right person, at the right time, to the right extent, in the right manner, and for the right purpose. Thus, to give money away is quite a simple task, but for the act to be virtuous, the donor must give to the right person, for the right purpose, in the right amount, in the right manner, and at the right time. These young people have exalted notions because they have not been humbled by life or learned its necessary limitations. Moreover, their hopeful disposition makes them think themselves equal to great things, and that means having exalted notions. They would always rather do noble deeds than useful ones. Their lives are regulated more by moral feeling than by reasoning. All their mistakes are in the direction of doing things excessively and vehemently. They overdo everything that they love too much, hate too much, and the same with everything else. For both excessive and insufficient exercise destroy one's strength, and both eating and drinking too much or too little destroy health, whereas the right quantity produces, increases, and preserves it. So it is the same with temperance, courage, and the other virtues. This much, then, is clear: in all our conduct it is the mean that is to be commended. We are the sum of our actions, and therefore our habits make all the difference. A democracy exists whenever those who are free and are not well off, being in the majority, are in sovereign control of government; an oligarchy when control lies with the rich and better born, these being few. We become just by the practice of just actions, self-controlled by exercising self-control, and courageous by performing acts of courage. Money is a guarantee that we may have what we want in the future. Though we need nothing at the moment, it ensures the possibility of satisfying a new desire when it arises. When you feel yourself lacking something, send your thoughts towards your intimate and search for the divinity that lives within you. For as the eyes of bats are to the blaze of day, so is the reason in our soul to the things which are by nature most evident of all. Friends hold a mirror up to each other. Through that mirror they can see each other in ways that would not otherwise be accessible to them, and it is this mirroring that helps them improve themselves as persons. Health is a matter of choice, not a mystery of chance. Man is by nature a social animal. An individual who is unsocial naturally and not accidentally is either beneath our notice or more than human. Society is something that precedes the individual. Anyone who either cannot lead the common life or is so self-sufficient as not to need to, and therefore does not partake of society, is either a beast or a god. Music directly imitates the passions or states of the soul. When one listens to music that imitates a certain passion, he becomes imbued with the same passion. And if over a long time he habitually listens to music that rouses ignoble passions, his whole character will be shaped to an ignoble form. Of the tyrant, spies and informers are the principal instruments. War is his favorite occupation, for the sake of engrossing the attention of the people, and making himself necessary to them as their leader. To be angry is easy. But to be angry with the right man at the right time and in the right manner, that is not easy. The greater the length, the more beautiful will the piece be by reason of its size, provided that the whole be perspicuous. A proper wife should be as obedient as a slave. The female is a female by virtue of a certain lack of qualities, a natural defectiveness. Where your talents and the needs of the world cross, therein lies your vocation. These two, your talents and the needs of the world, are the great wake-up calls to your true vocation in life. To ignore this is, in some sense, is to lose your soul. Happiness is a thing honored and perfect. This seems to be borne out by the fact that it is a first principle or starting point, since all other things that all men do are done for its sake, and that which is the first principle and cause of things good we agree to be something honorable and divine. A period may be defined as a portion of speech that has in itself a beginning and an end, being at the same time not too big to be taken in at a glance. It belongs to small-mindedness to be unable to bear either honor or dishonor, either good fortune or bad, but to be filled with conceit when honored and puffed up by trifling good fortune, and to be unable to bear even the smallest dishonor, and to deem any chance failure a great misfortune, and to be distressed and annoyed at everything. Moreover, the small-minded man is the sort of person to call all slights an insult and dishonor, even those that are due to ignorance or forgetfulness. Small-mindedness is accompanied by pettiness, querulousness, pessimism, and self-abasement. The senses are gateways to the intelligence. There is nothing in the intelligence which did not first pass through the senses. Tools may be animate as well as inanimate. For instance, a ship's captain uses a lifeless rudder, but a living man for watch, for a servant is, from the point of view of his craft, categorized as one of its tools. So any piece of property can be regarded as a tool enabling a man to live, and his property is an assemblage of such tools. A slave is a sort of living piece of property, and like any other servant is a tool in charge of other tools. No one loves the man whom he fears. The difference between a learned man and an ignorant one is the same as that between a living man and a corpse. The difference between a learned man and an ignorant one is the same as that between a living man and a corpse. A tragedy is the imitation of an action that is serious and also, as having magnitude, complete in itself, with incidents arousing pity and fear, wherewith to accomplish its catharsis of such emotions. Obstinate people can be divided into the opinionated, the ignorant, and the boorish. The aim of education is to make the pupil like and dislike what he ought. The little human animal will not at first have the right responses. It must be trained to feel pleasure, liking, disgust, and hatred at those things which really are pleasant, likable, disgusting, and hateful. The seat of the soul and the control of voluntary movement, in fact, of nervous functions in general, are to be sought in the heart. The brain is an organ of minor importance. The seat of the soul and the control of voluntary movement, in fact, of nervous functions in general, are to be sought in the heart. The brain is an organ of minor importance. There are, then, these three means of effecting persuasion. The man who is to be in command of them must, it is clear, be able to reason logically, to understand human character and goodness in their various forms, and to understand the emotions, that is, to name them and describe them, to know their causes and the way in which they are excited. Happiness is something final and complete in itself, as being the aim and end of all practical activities whatever. Happiness then we define as the active exercise of the mind in conformity with perfect goodness or virtue. Of the modes of persuasion furnished by the spoken word there are three kinds. The first kind depends on the personal character of the speaker, the second on putting the audience into a certain frame of mind, the third on the proof provided by the words of the speech itself. Truth is a remarkable thing. We cannot miss knowing some of it, but we cannot know it entirely. Salt water when it turns into vapor becomes sweet, and the vapor does not form salt water when it condenses again. This I know by experiment. The same thing is true in every case of the kind. Wine and all fluids that evaporate and condense back into a liquid state become water. They all are water modified by a certain admixture, the nature of which determines their flavor. The self-indulgent man craves for all pleasant things, and is led by his appetite to choose these at the cost of everything else. All human actions have one or more of these seven causes: chance, nature, compulsions, habit, reason, passion, desire. Metaphysics involves intuitive knowledge of unprovable starting points, concepts, and truth, and demonstrative knowledge of what follows from them. If thinking is like perceiving, it must be either a process in which the soul is acted upon by what is capable of being thought, or a process different from but analogous to that. The thinking part of the soul must therefore be, while impassible, capable of receiving the form of an object, that is, must be potentially identical in character with its object without being the object. Mind must be related to what is thinkable, as sense is to what is sensible. The same ideas, one must believe, recur in men's minds not once or twice, but again and again. The same ideas, one must believe, recur in men's minds not once or twice, but again and again. Music imitates the passions or states of the soul, such as gentleness, anger, courage, temperance, and their opposites. It is simplicity that makes the uneducated more effective than the educated when addressing popular audiences. Happiness does not consist in pastimes and amusements but in virtuous activities. If the poor, for example, because they are more in number, divide among themselves the property of the rich, is not this unjust? This law of confiscation clearly cannot be just. We should behave to our friends as we would wish our friends behave to us. Without friends no one would choose to live, though he had all other goods. Although it may be difficult in theory to know what is just and equal, the practical difficulty of inducing those to forbear who can, if they like, encroach, is far greater, for the weaker are always asking for equality and justice, but the stronger care for none of these things. The greatest thing by far is to have a command of metaphor. This alone cannot be imparted by another. It is the mark of genius, for to make good metaphors implies an eye for resemblances. Nature of man is not what he was born as, but what he is born for. Demonstration is also something necessary, because a demonstration cannot go otherwise than it does. And the cause of this lies with the primary premises principles. The good of man is the active exercise of his soul's faculties. This exercise must occupy a complete lifetime. One swallow does make a spring, nor does one fine day. Excellence is a habit, not an event. And inasmuch as the great-souled man deserves most, he must be the best of men, for the better a man is the more he deserves, and he that is best deserves most. Therefore the truly great-souled man must be a good man. Indeed, greatness in each of the virtues would seem to go with greatness of soul. Those who educate children well are more to be honored than they who produce them, for these only gave them life, those the art of living well. Everybody loves a thing more if it has cost him trouble. For instance, those who have made money love money more than those who have inherited it. Excellence, then, is a state concerned with choice, lying in a mean, relative to us, this being determined by reason and in the way in which the man of practical wisdom would determine it. Teachers, who educate children, deserve more honor than parents, who merely gave them birth, for the latter provided mere life, while the former ensure a good life. A tyrant must put on the appearance of uncommon devotion to religion. Subjects are less apprehensive of illegal treatment from a ruler whom they consider God-fearing and pious. On the other hand, they do less easily move against him, believing that he has the gods on his side. No one praises happiness as one praises justice, but we call it a blessing, deeming it something higher and more divine than things we praise. Suppose, then, that all men were sick or deranged, save one or two of them who were healthy and of right mind. It would then be the latter two who would be thought to be sick and deranged, and the former not. For we do not think that we know a thing until we are acquainted with its primary conditions or first principles, and have carried our analysis as far as its simplest elements. The avarice of mankind is insatiable. At one time 2 obols was pay enough, but now, when this sum has become customary, men always want more and more without end. Opinion involves belief, and in the brutes though we often find imagination, we never find belief. Misfortune shows those who are not really friends. Men are marked from the moment of birth to rule or be ruled. In bad or corrupted natures, the body will often appear to rule over the soul, because they are in an evil and unnatural condition. At all events, we may firstly observe in living creatures both a despotical and a constitutional rule, for the soul rules the body with a despotical rule, whereas the intellect rules the appetites with a constitutional and royal rule.